Orks. We're going to talk about orcs. Now, as the time we're recording this, it is October. Hopefully I'll get it out when it's still October so it's more relevant. Why is October relevant? Because it's Orktober, baby. Let's start at the beginning with orcs. Orcs were created by the old ones during the War in Heaven. They were originally known as Korks. Now, once the War in Heaven ended, the Korks kind of just like, what do we do now? Because they lost their purpose because they were living weapons. And so they started fighting each other. And from this fighting each other, they turned into the orcs that we know now in 40K. Now, there's a few big things I want to talk about with the orcs. First being their physiology. Now, what makes the orcs so unique in their physiology is that they are fungal-based life forms. They are fungus. They are fun guys. Please don't unsubscribe. Please don't leave. Alright, so orcs reproduce through fungal spores, and this actually makes them incredibly dangerous when invading it, due to the fact that if one spore makes it, they can just keep going and going. And this also makes their bodies significantly harder to kill, simply for the fact that they're more durable and they have less vital organs to operate. So that means you can shoot them as much as you want and they're most likely going to live. As evidence as some of their major characters in the lore getting their heads blown off and just being fine. Another major thing I'm going to talk about is probably even more important than the physiology is the Wa. Now, what is the Wa? Think of it as the power of imagination, but times a million. You see, orcs operate with the power of belief. So by this, I have to give, the best way to explain it is I have to give examples. So the first example is the color red. Color red is the faster color. If they paint their vehicles red, that means that vehicle will go faster. If they paint their bombs yellow, that means their bombs will blow up more and do more damage. If they want to sneak into an enemy base, they paint themselves purple because purple is the sneakiest color. Let's say you find a gun on a battlefield and it's utterly destroyed. The barrel is crooked, dents all over. It won't even shoot right. You throw it back on the ground and walk off. The orc finds that same gun, picks it up, and he's like, ooh, this is good, shoot well. And then, if he believes if it's a good enough gun, it will shoot. Will it shoot good? Maybe, but it will still fire. You couldn't get it to work, but he can because he believes that it will shoot, it will fire. And that's how powerful the orc Wa is, this power of belief. Some say it's some sort of form of chaos energy. I don't really think so. I think they operate on something entirely different. But no, that's just my theory. And another thing that makes this Wa so dangerous is the more orcs that are around with the same belief, the more powerful they are. So let's say you have one leader, one war boss, one big orc leading a whole army. If that whole army keeps thinking he's the biggest orc, he's the strongest orc, that orc will be bigger and stronger. And then imagine if more and more orcs join him in his army, his war band, there we go. He'll just become bigger and stronger. And then of course, the bigger the stronger the orc is, the more orcs will follow him, and it just becomes this cycle of more and more belief becoming more and more stronger the more and more powerful a Wa is. The only thing that's stopping the orcs using the Wa to completely take over the universe is themselves. For two reasons they stop themselves. First is they fight each other way too much. Orcs love a good fight, and if other orcs can offer a good fight, they will fight each other. That's just how it is. They want to fight, they'll look for a fight. They don't care who it's with as long as it's a good fight. And the second is I'm pretty sure they already believe that if there's no one else to fight, it would just be too boring. Many times they're portrayed as dumb, but I think they're a little bit smarter than they're given credit for. I personally believe that they know enough to know that if they take over everything, there won't be any more good fights. And if there's no good fights, then where's the fun? Last things I want to talk about is the sort of the culture of the orcs. The first thing being is there's actually a very standard hierarchy, starting with grots and what kind of look like, little goblin-like creatures. They are sort of the underlings. They are tasked with getting food, taking care of, pets and all that stuff. And basically, they are the fodder. They are usually the first to die, whether by other orcs, by just needing something to punch, or by enemies that they're fighting. Then you got your regular orcs who are, they will just go away yelling, "Ah!" into battle, because why shoot when it's so much better to smash? Because they love smashing. Of course, you got the war bosses, which are the biggest orcs. They are the biggest and the strongest, and they are in charge, and you better listen to him or he will bash you in. Orcs that have their own purposes, like you got mech boys who take care of all the vehicles and all the guns and actually make mechs themselves, because orcs actually do have giant robots and mech suits to fight and wage war with, because why not? They have something called Weird Boys, which are special orcs that can harness the power of the Wa and use it to make their own version of psychic powers, whether it be, shooting lightning from their mouths or making other orcs around them stronger. And usually they don't like it, so oftentimes they are tied up and against their will and forced into battle while being carried by other orcs. And then you got your pain boys, which are basically, they're medics, they're doctors. Now these guys, they will cut you up and replace body parts with mechanics, because why not? Oh, you got a cut on your arm? Well, I'm going to cut it off and give you a robot arm because I can. You have no say, I'm just going to do it. And another thing about orcs is, a thing about their physiology is they don't need training. They just know, like mech boys, they just know how to make, machines. Like they just know how to fix cars. It's like when they're being, I guess, grown from the spores, they just are naturally assigned a role in the orc hierarchy to be, whether a pain boy or a weird boy, or maybe they're preordained to be a war boss, or just be the guy that watches the grots and the stotlings and make sure they don't pull some trickery to somehow take over the orc hierarchy, because that does happen every now and again. And it creates this really interesting atmosphere to read about. I mean, I don't want to participate in, because I would not have a good time. I don't think anyone would have a good time. And then I think another interesting thing about orc culture is, to some, they may think, oh, they're just dumb. But they're actually probably the most progressive race out there in 40k, because they don't care who you are as long as you can fight. Like, there are many examples where orcs they won't like necessarily worship the Emperor of Mankind, but they'll be like, oh yeah, he can fight because he's so big and powerful. He is the strongest human out there. So many of them won't worship him, but they'll respect him. And there's also been times in the lore where, like, generals and commissars in the Astra Militum or Imperial Guard, they'll respect those leaders because they're leading other troops from fighting, and they're like, oh, that must be a good war boss. He must be big and scary. Oftentimes they're disappointed because humans don't get bigger, but they still respect them. And they also look at defeat in a much different way than most in the Warhammer 40k universe, because they don't look as defeat as necessarily a bad thing. They look at it as I tried. Tomorrow I'll try again, and tomorrow might win. They are really optimistic in that way, because they don't give up. They just keep trying and trying. It doesn't matter how many times they lose, they just keep trying. And that's kind of how I want to end this video on, is that idea of constantly trying no matter how hard you get defeated, because I know that it's kind of cheesy to add a positive message at the end of a video talking about Warhammer 40k and orcs, but I know with this kind of year that message is needed. So, like, just take a page from the orcs in that regard. Doesn't matter how hard you get defeated, how hard you lose, just pick yourself up and try again. May the Emperor protect, and have a good day.